This is even better than we thought, as early on, the Islanders youth movement is paying off with strong returns. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Islanders Digest. We're going to talk a little bit about last night's game against the Columbus Blue Jackets, but really focusing on the lens of the young players, which I think are a huge part of why they won that game. I mean, for starters, Matthew Schaefer with 2 goals. Obviously, he was an essential part of winning that game. He now has 5 goals and 10 points in 12 games. That is absolutely a stunning pace for a rookie defenseman, especially an 18-year-old rookie defenseman at that, and he is now first among defensemen in goals. And after seeing this stat, I decided to take some time and look at Matthew Schaefer's shooting percentage, and as of right now, he's shooting at around 13.4%. Now, for a defenseman, that is definitely high, but it's not outstandingly high like at first I thought it was going to be. I was assuming he was going to be shooting at around 20%, because 5 goals in 12 games for a defenseman is absolutely ridiculous. And for the second goal, he definitely did get a lucky bounce. The first one was just a perfectly timed and placed shot on the power play. But overall, I think both those goals highlighted one thing that Schaefer is really good at early on, and that is both getting pucks on net and getting dangerous pucks on net. Because for the most part, his shot selection has been very good. At times, I think there are plays where he can hold onto the puck just a second longer, or even maybe make an extra pass. But for the most part, he picks good times to get the puck on net, and when he puts the puck on net, he's good at getting it to the net. We talk a lot about Ryan Pulock, and one of the most frustrating parts about him as a defenseman is he has the really hard shot, but he does not get it on the goaltender consistently. Matthew Schaefer has shown he's able to find lanes to get the puck on goal, and his shot, it really has some whip to it, more whip than I really expected going into the season. Really, everything Schaefer has done is better than we expected going into the season, but really the shot is something I really want to focus on more now that he does have 5 goals. And while that 13.4 shooting percentage is high, it's not outstandingly high. We see players like Cale Makar, who, yes, is the best defenseman in the world, is able to consistently shoot at around 11%. A lot of defensemen are shooting more at the 5% range, but Matthew Schaefer isn't most defensemen. Realistically, I can see him being a player that does consistently shoot between the 7 and 12 percentage ratings. And as a result, this is really encouraging that he scored 5 goals with a 13.4%, because while that is high, it's not absurdly high. And in fact, for forwards, especially upper quality forwards, 13.4 is actually somewhat standard. Simon Holmstrom is a player, for example, who has a very high shooting percentage. There are other players who are more quantity over quality. But so far for Schaefer, these numbers, while they might not quite look like this, I think realistically over a full season, it's probably going to be more assists rather than a 5 goal, 5 assist split over 12 games. But he is showing a lot of great things, and a lot for Islander fans to really be excited about. And while we're talking about the goals, got a note here, he is now the youngest defenseman in NHL history with a multi-goal game since Bobby Orr. He did it younger than Bobby Orr did, and whenever you're getting compared to Bobby Orr as a defenseman, that is really high praise. And you know, he's really passing the eye test, and one thing I really want to highlight when it comes to Schaefer is it has not just been the offensive metrics. We've seen a lot of rookie defensemen breaking into the NHL this season, a lot more than we typically do, especially when it comes to high-powered offensively defensemen. Zane Parekh, Z Bouillon are 2 players in particular, and one thing I really want to emphasize on, first of all, Schaefer has more points than Z Bouillon, who is on a way more prolific power play than the Islanders power play. In fact, Schaefer's really making the Islanders power play work as well as it does. But one thing I want to note there is these defensemen, while both being a year older, and they're both top 10 selections in the NHL draft, they've shown a lot of struggle early on the defensive side of the puck, and that's something we have not seen with Schaefer at all. Zane Parekh has been a scratch in several games for the Calgary Flames already this year, as they've really tried to evaluate if he's even NHL ready. And here Schaefer is commanding, while last night he only played 17 minutes, when he plays those minutes exceptionally well. And we've seen games where he's already dominated at 26 minutes, and we're likely going to see that ice time go up a little more consistently as the season goes on. And I think he's going to eventually settle at around 24 minutes per game at the end of the season, at least if he continues at this pace, which of course is unheard of. And when it comes to Schaefer, I'm still not trying to put any expectations on him as a player because he is so young, 18 years old. But at this point, I find like we're almost talking about him on the channel a little bit less in the sense of just highlighting him in every clip, because really you're almost starting to expect strong performances out of Schaefer because that's how good of a player he is. Now, speaking of defensive performances, I really want to highlight Calum Ritchie because Schaefer is now not the only Islanders rookie leading the way. Callum Richie is now playing another game on the second line. It looks like, based on morning skate, that's going to be his positioning again against the Boston Bruins tomorrow. So that's going to be 3 straight games as a second line center for the New York Islanders. And so far, while it is a very small sample size, he looks like he absolutely belongs. I'd love to know in the comments below what you've thought of Calum Ritchie's performances so far. For me, I've been so impressed with the defensive side of the puck. And this is something I don't want Islander fans to get too spoiled with here, because typically this is not what you see with players coming up into the NHL. Schaefer and Calum Ritchie have both been exceptions in terms of how well they look defensively to start. And just looking at the stats, in the 15 minutes his line has played together, opponents have less than a .08 goals expected. In addition, the Islanders are out shooting their opponents during that time 8-0. That is clear offensive dominance. Now they have not, defensive dominance. Now they have not scored yet offensively. I think that's coming. I think Calum Ritchie has begun to show more flashes in that last game. He really had that nice between the legs move. He's also made some really good aware transitionary passes. He's also shown a little more speed than I really expected from him coming out of this season. At this point, while I think currently, as he currently is playing, Calum Ritchie is a better fit for a third line center on a good team in the NHL. There's little doubt in my mind, watching him play so well in the NHL so early on, that this is a player who is at least going to be a second-line center of the future. Perhaps even a first-line center, which is something I kind of doubted when he first was traded for. Looking at him out there, he looks great. He looks composed. I've been very impressed with Calum Ritchie. I'd love to know your thoughts. Well, he definitely has earned at this point more time, not just with the Islanders, but more time on that second line. Because while I don't think Calum Ritchie is quite ready to really control the offense on a second line, I think this line of Drouin, Ritchie, Palmieri works very well. And more importantly, it gives the Islanders a true first line with Mathew Barzal playing with Bo Horvat. And honestly, looking at the way this second line has been playing, and for the record, the second line wasn't all too great with Mathew Barzal centering it. I think it's actually been way better defensively with Calum Ritchie than it has been with Mathew Barzal. I really think Mathew Barzal is a better defensive winger than he is a center. So high praise for Calum Ritchie defensively, and I think the offense is coming very shortly. And definitely, at the very least, he's earned himself a longer leash. Keep in mind, I think Patrick Waugh deserves all the credit in the world for these rookies and how they're playing, because he's allowing them to play. In the first 2 games for Calum Ritchie, he had 16 minutes in the first game, almost 14 minutes in the second game. Patrick Waugh is allowing these guys to play. He gives Schaefer more ice time when he's playing well, and this is really something new with the New York Islanders. When in the past, prospects have not gotten a lot of opportunities. It's really refreshing to watch these guys play and earn their minutes, which so far I really think they have. And at some point, they're going to have to make a tough decision when it comes to Shabanov coming back in the lineup and what to do with Calum Ritchie. We talked about that in a previous video. At this point, until Calum Ritchie shows you otherwise, or shows you that he's not quite ready, he belongs on this lineup for the Islanders. And more importantly, he belongs, maybe if not in the top 6, certainly in the top 9. But really, you can make the case that he does belong in the top 6, especially if the production starts to tick up like I expect it to. Now, I also really quickly want to highlight Simon Holmstrom, who also had a strong game. As Stefan Rosner pointed out, I actually didn't know that there were so many people in this fan base who hate on Holmstrom's play. And from what we've seen so far, I don't understand why. I think the motion to the fourth line was a huge mistake early on in this season. He so far has 4 goals, 3 assists, and really, if you look at his he has 4 goals. He has 8 points in 12 games for the Islanders, but over his last 7 games, he has 4 goals and 3 assists. And when you look at him play, first of all, that's a pace for 50 points per game. But for me, with Holmstrom, the offense is a bonus because he is a very strong penalty killer. He is very smart defensively. I really don't care what certain metrics say about him as a player. The Islanders are a better team defensively when he's on the ice. And the fact that he is also able to score goals and also able to really show, he's shown more of a playmaker element this season for the Islanders, really showing off his hands a little bit more. And that really shows me there's another element to his game. We talked a lot during the offseason that while obviously it's always good for the Islanders to win, not all wins are the same. And for the Islanders to win off the backs of three young players, three players who are a part of the future, is very encouraging. And I want to leave this video off looking at the standings, as so far, while the Islanders have spent a lot of time really focusing on young players, they're not really suffering any consequences for it. As we've seen in the past, when a lot of teams develop young players, it takes some time and they have some rough starts. We've seen that with Chicago. We've seen that with San Jose. We're not seeing that with the Islanders. Yes, technically, they are tied for last place in the division because really, there is a six-way tie here between so many teams having 13 points in 12 games. But what's crazy about the division early on, and we're not going to be showing these stats every single game when it comes to the standings, at least until we get closer to the playoff race. But looking at this here, the Islanders are only 1 point away from a wild card. In fact, they have a game in hand against the Rangers. And what's really impressive when you think about that is just how it's been young players really leading the way for the Islanders. Yes, other players such as Bo Horvat, Mathew Barzal have been contributing a lot to that, but it's been a really good mix for the Islanders, and this is exactly what you want to see. If the Islanders had 13 points at this point in the season and they were being led by players such as Anders Lee and Kyle Palmieri, you would be a little concerned, but it's very encouraging. These players like Schaefer and now Calum Ritchie are stepping up to really give the Islanders, I think, the best look they've had all season. I truly believe the Islanders are not just developing their future by having Calum Ritchie play on the second line. I think this is a better team for it because it's a team that all of a sudden looks so much deeper in the top nine. I'd love to know your thoughts on these players' play so far. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm your host, Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.